Look, it will grow back, okay? There will be a memorial. Roll the clip. But welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new news roundup video. And trust me, it's still me, even though I may have de-aged a bit. But either way, we're going all around the shop today with various stories that have interested me that I think will interest you as well. Some you may have heard about, some perhaps not. But we're going to dive straight into quite a significant update with the DC Studios DCU Sgt Rock movie. But first, before we get into that DCU news, Future Boba here, because we've had a very interesting update. And that is to do with James Gunn and Zack Snyder. Now, I don't want to waste too much of your time because this video is long enough as it is already, but James Gunn posted to his Instagram a picture of him and Zack Snyder with the caption saying, "Always a pleasure catching up with my friend, Zack Snyder, consummate filmmaker and doubly consummate storyteller." Now, okay, first of all, that is just interesting, and there's that Obi-Wan quote that comes to mind.
As if millions of voices suddenly cried out in terror.
It's just a joke. Don't go crazy. But it's interesting. Okay, but I've got other ideas. Now, shout out to DCFilmNews here. What does this mean, maybe? Well, as soon as I saw this, some of you could have called me crazy, but I'm like, could maybe something be going on here? Now, I don't want to get people going crazy with conspiracy theories, but DCFilmNews said, "Oh, I recognize this room." And that's true. Look at this photo. And then look at this other photo, and this other photo is basically the DC Studios HQ where they get, like, all of their basically the people who are making the DCU slate happen, that they're there. Like, do you know what I mean? Snyder is with James Gunn in the same location. Now, you could just say, "Hey, Boba, maybe you're gonna be overreacting here, like, he could have just stopped by." True. Again, like, anything goes here. Truly. But at the same time, I think it'd be foolish of me, maybe people think it would be foolish of me to entertain, but I think it's foolish of me to not entertain. Like, imagine if something so crazy came out of left field and Gunn somehow managed to, because again, they're friends apparently, somehow managed to get Snyder on board with a project under DC Studios. And I know, like, hold your horses. I'm not seriously saying that's going to happen at all. I'm just throwing it out there, spitballing. I'm throwing paint on the wall. Hey, will it stick? Probably not, but here's the idea. And the reason why I don't think that's necessarily out of this world crazy is because, don't forget, DC Studios isn't just doing DCU canonical projects, it's doing, Elseworlds things. Maybe if you did want to go as far as saying a DCU project, maybe somebody else writes the project so Snyder can focus on his strength, and that is directing. I've seen some people say, how mad would it be if Snyder was directing The Authority, but somebody else wrote The Authority, that kind of thing. But I don't want to entertain that too much because, again, this is just a photo of James Gunn and Zack Snyder. Granted, it's at the place where all the cooking seems to happen for DC Studios behind the scenes. But another thing I do want to mention before I sign off and go back to Past Boba here is that there's been something that I've been expecting for a long time. And I've been saying this for a while, and it's not me calling it because DC Studios has said this themselves, and that is from DC Studios Fan First. You can sign up on their website to their email, right? And we've been hearing for a long time that we could be, even outside this website, from various scoopers that something could be coming early next year, just in terms of information. And then we had this website launch, and it says, "We have lots of new projects and announcements coming soon. So sign up today and be among the first fans to know." Nothing has happened since this website launched in terms of new projects and announcements coming soon. Now, could this be a sign of finally what I've been saying? I said I didn't know if it would be in January, like 2023's Gods and Monsters slate reveal, if it would be February, like nothing's happened so far, but could we be getting something soon? Maybe the end of this week, next week, maybe? And I know I'm just basing this all off of this bloody photo, but hey, it's something we've been expecting. Could Snyder be involved in that? Maybe, maybe not. I think that would be wild, by the way. Like, absolutely wild. And I know some people would be like, "Boba, how could you even begin to entertain that after what Zack Snyder, had with his experience under Warner Brothers, with DC? He would never, ever, ever, even if he's friends with James Gunn, go back and helm a project, even if it's just directing even if it's a new regime again. I totally get what you're saying. I wanted to speak in this video what probably a lot of people are thinking, on the off chance. But as for news coming soon, well, I guess that could be happening as well. I mean, again, I'm expecting it. But one thing I do want to say, I swear to God, the blessing and the curse on this channel, I have a video pre-recorded to go up tomorrow or Saturday. And if this news drops like Friday, as in tomorrow when I'm filming this, or Saturday, I will cry. I will do worse than cry. I will self-implode because it's just so typical. I'm quite a homebody. Maybe some of you guys know that through just getting to know me a bit better on streams and stuff. And I don't go out all the time. But for once, I'm like, okay, I'm out of the flat this Friday evening and Saturday. So I just want you to know, just in case something does drop, I will make a video about it, but I might not be first to it. I might be making my video on Sunday or Monday or something like that, just in case something happens. And the reason why I am talking like this is just because it feels like one of those things, like a prelude to something more. I mean, I could be wrong. I know I keep saying that, but when you couple that in with also, we have lots of new projects and announcements coming soon. Well, I've been expecting you, DC, for some kind of slate update or something or another that we've been theorizing about since this website first launched. And maybe it is just around the corner. But I do want to let you know, obviously I'll be doing a video on it. Please be patient with me if I'm not making a video until early next week. But let me know your thoughts on what this photo is with regards to Zack Snyder and James Gunn. Do you think it's absolutely nothing? Do you hate entertaining the idea that Snyder would even begin to consider working with his friend James Gunn under this new regime? Or, do you think that's possible? Or do you think, I don't know. But either way, back to past Boba. This is a long video, lots of stories. Hope you guys go on to enjoy it. But just looking at James Gunn's face there, he knows what he was doing when he uploaded this photo. Quite a significant update with the DC Studios DCU Sgt Rock movie, because as you may know, Luca Guadagnino and Daniel Craig look to be teaming up again for Daniel Craig in the role of Sgt Rock, but that may no longer be the case. And why is that? Well, we've got a report here from The Hollywood Reporter, and there may very well be another contender for the role. Daniel Craig's DC Comics debut will have to wait. The actor is no longer attached to star in Sgt Rock, the DC Studios feature project that would have reunited him with his queer director, Luca Guadagnino. The feature has a script from screenwriter Justin Kuritzk's. Butchered that. For those who don't know, Sgt. Rock is a World War II soldier who first appeared in the comics in 1959. He is the tough as nails leader of Easy Company, with the unit's exploits delighting readers for decades as one of DC's longest-running books. This is intriguing because before we get deeper into this and who else may very well be in the runnings for the role, I actually really gelled with the idea of Daniel Craig because he has a bit of star power, obviously, to bring to that role, like a DCU movie. How cool is that? Daniel Craig willing to be in a DCU movie, and not only that, I can see him being this sergeant in World War II in the DC universe. Also, who knows what else could have popped up in this movie? Again, metahumans and heroes and villains have been around for a long time. Frickin' G.I. Robot could have gone insane in that movie. Not that this movie needed to be fan service with like Justice Society, left, right, center, or anything like that. I do believe this would have been an example of what James Gunn said with regards to how each movie in the DCU, or while it's an interconnected universe, they've got to focus on the quality of the movie as a story within this DCU. So this would have been, like, ideally, right, on paper, a badass World War II movie set within the DC universe, and, it would have hopefully, stood on its own 2 feet. By the way, they continue to say here, reasons for Craig's departure remain unclear. Some said the actor's schedule ran into roadblocks with that of his wife, actress Rachel Weisz. Other sources said that the actor soured on the role after Queer failed to perform not only at the box office but also in the awards season race. DC is hoping to shoot the feature this summer in its UK hub and is already out to other actors. One name making the rounds is Jeremy Allen White, among others. DC had no comment. So Jeremy Allen White, the bear, right? So, oh man, this is so fascinating because my first knee-jerk reaction was like, oh, I don't know. But the more I thought, like, okay, let's really think about this for a second. I know, I feel like I'm vibing. A lot of you might be like, nah, like, Jeremy Allen White's not really Sergeant right off, like, the get-go. But the more you think about it, the more, like, let's just say he gave himself, like, a buzz cut. They got him in the Sgt Rock costume, the wardrobe, in the World War II prequel DCU story. I can actually imagine him as, like, to be fair, he will be a bit of a younger Sgt Rock compared to what, again, I think the perfect Sgt Rock age would be like late 30s, early 40s, or towards mid 40s, maybe. Daniel Craig was obviously mid 50s. Initially, I wasn't so sure, but again, the more I thought about it, the dude is kind of built for it. Height doesn't really concern me because I know that's what people would say next, but he's 5'7", Boba. But like, again, movie magic. I am wondering if, I don't know with Daniel Craig, this is just my own conjecture, like, are they offering to pay him enough? Is he, I mean, I know they're saying like, oh, you know, maybe scheduling conflicts, and other sources are saying that maybe he's soured on the role, but I am wondering, is DC Studios like offering enough money? Because that's another rumor as well, even surrounding Jeremy Allen White. I believe Jeff Snyder, again, take his reports with a grain of salt, his sources saying one thinks it will happen, another is skeptical because of money. Maybe money isn't even impressing Jeremy Allen White, let alone maybe even Daniel Craig. So we're gonna have to wait and see. Like right now, it's not like DC Studios has tapped down major A-listers. I believe like the top, or would I say most popular actors they've got with maybe some of the bigger paydays would be Nicholas Hoult, maybe Rachel Brosnahan. So I don't know what they're approaching actors like Daniel Craig, hey, do you want to do our movie in the DCU with, and maybe even Jeremy Allen White is sniffing, maybe I could get a bit more money for this. But either way, I would love to know your thoughts on this. Sgt Rock, they're absolutely pursuing it. They're just trying to find their actor. It looks like Daniel Craig is out. How do you feel about Jeremy Allen White? I wouldn't dislike it. It had to sit with me for 5 or 10 minutes, but the more I envisioned it, the more I could see him in a gritty World War II DCU movie. That, again, I have no, like, information on this, but I just envision what we saw with Brad Pitt in Inglourious Bastards, but a DCU level. Like, because we know that the DCU isn't afraid of going R-rated when the story warrants it. And that's another thing we've still yet to find out with Sgt Rock. Like, are they gonna like go all out and make it more of an adult World War II film, just with crazy crap happening? Again, like, look at G.I. Robot and Creature Commandos. They did not shy away from what kind of stuff you saw when his bullets were tearing apart enemy soldiers. So, you know, I can imagine Jeremy Allen White just going apeshit crazy as Sgt Rock and it just being this mad DC mission. Now, speaking of Creature Commandos briefly there as well, we do have a teeny little update on Season 2 from the showrunner here. Now, this is coming from the direct saying, yeah, I mean, it's still early days, but we are actively working on breaking the season and starting to figure that out. So it's definitely moving forward. I mean, it's like they put it on a fast track and they seem to mean it. So yeah, we're in it. He also teases a little bit maybe of a new roster, which they kind of hinted at the end, saying that I think it will at least be somewhat accurate. I mean, it's like those are all characters that we think would be really fun in the season. And James Gunn wrote, you know, all the episodes last season, so those were his instincts, which are pretty good. So yeah, I would say there's that. And I mean, there's no world where I would want to do a season without a beefed up G.I. Robot. And I kind of forget sometimes how beefed up G.I. Robot is. So it's interesting how Creature Commando Season 2 is being fast-tracked, yet Gunn probably hasn't written the episodes yet, but then again, he is an insanely fast writer, so there's probably lots of other things that they can get on with regards to preparing for Season 2, with how long a season like Creature Commandos takes to make in the animated format, right? So I'm sure they've had conversations. They have characters that they know are going to be on the roster for Season 2 that they can start, you know, conceptualizing and things like that. And Gunn, slowly but surely, can write the episodes as of when he gets to that. But again, if you guys know anything about Gunn, like Peacemaker Season 2, Creature Commandos, he wrote both of those insanely fast, so I wouldn't be surprised if he does a similar thing with Season 2. Up next, in the realms of DCU Batman, I know quite a few people will be excited about this, but not everyone. But one of the bigger fan castings for DCU Batman, as you may have heard, is Brandon Skelnar. And he has been asked recently what his thoughts are about that, and it is quite cool to see him talk about it. And the reason why I say it's quite cool without getting or trying to get overexcited here is because it feels like history is maybe repeating itself. We'll have to wait and see with regards to that. But David Corenswet, like as far back as 2019, maybe before then, you may have seen those resurfaced interview clips of him being asked, like, hey man, people want you to be Superman, how would you feel about that? And he's just goofily smiling and saying that would be really cool, it's like my pie in the sky dream. And then lo and behold, because I'm normally of the opinion you shouldn't fan cast too much because it almost makes it not happen, but it happened to that extent with David Corenswet years ago, and look, he's Superman. So I'm of the opinion that Brandon Skelnar is of that vibe to at least be in the front runner list for Batman when the time comes. And this is his response about the whole Batman situation. And this is from TheMoviePodcast, so check the clip out for yourself. But he says, Batman's been my favorite comic book since I was a child. And it's like secretly been my forever dream to be Batman. Like, that's not something you want to say too much, you know, because you're like, oh, okay. The TheMoviePodcast host then points out how there's a vacancy right now for the role of Batman in James Gunn's new DC universe. What is it about the character that you love so much? And Skelnar goes on to say that I started seeing all of this fan art and I was like, oh damn, I like this. This kind of makes sense. It kind of makes a lot of sense. It also kind of parallels to Spencer Dutton. There's a lot of parallels between these types of men, and yeah, I just think I would crush that role and I would love to do it if it ever happens. I'd gladly do it. And I like his confidence there, being like, I would crush that role. And it wasn't even said when you watch the interview, like from a cocky kind of place. He's just like, I would love to play Batman. I feel like I could crush it kind of thing. The host then points out this fight that his character had on the boat. That maybe you've seen this clip going around because it's one of the most frequent ones used in a little bit of a montage kind of sizzle reel thing to promote the idea of Brandon Skelnar being Batman. But in that Yellowstone prequel 1923, there is like a couple of moments where you can, it's almost like an audition, right, for Bruce Wayne. Brandon Skelnar acknowledged that by saying totally. Even when we were filming Season 2, I was like, this is kind of Batman-y. It was like quiet, vengeful, like deeply emotional man. And it was just like, I'm going to plow through whatever I can to do what's right for mine. It's a very powerful archetype, and it's very similar to Batman in some ways. So he was kind of geeking out here, and again, seeing him get like that, he's a bit more of like I don't know if I would say quite reserved, but his demeanor is a bit more, you know, less nerdy outy, but you could even tell that Brandon Skelnar was getting a bit like, yeah, I have to admit I see this and I would love to do this. And you guys know my thoughts about this. Trust me, watch the clip. You might know about Brandon Skelnar anyway, but if not, absolutely watch the Movies podcast clip about this. And I just feel like Brandon Skelnar, to give like credit to those who do actually fan cast him, he does reflect so much about what I would want personally in a DCU Batman. So like, he's got the look, he's insanely charismatic, he's literally built for it physically. He looks like the Bruce Wayne of the DCU as well, just in terms of age. Like, he's currently 34 years old, but by the time he'd be Batman in the DCU's The Brave and the Bold, he'd be at that perfect peak age that I've been saying for ages. Like, for a seasoned Batman with a Bat family built up around him, and as a father to Damian Wayne, I've always said, like, okay, like, if we work with it a little bit, even though in the comics he would be older, but if we work with it a little bit and make him a little bit closer to Superman's age in the DCU, maybe 36 to 38 would be good. Now, he also sort of embodies a casting that I think DC would go for anyway, but I have to admit, a bit to and fro on this one, so I would love your input. And what I mean by that is, for example, Superman, has usually been, I wouldn't go as far as saying an unknown, because I remember watching Henry Cavill on The Tudors years and years and years ago, probably way too young to watch that at the time. But he wasn't like an A-lister, right? But Batman has always been someone with more fame, such as Affleck, Christian Bale, so on and so forth. But you understand the distinction between Batman actors in Hollywood and Superman just through the history. So it makes me wonder if the DCU would go for a lesser-known actor this time. Not saying that Skelnar isn't known, but obviously, as per what I've been saying, he isn't known on like the A-lister level, and that's because Batman is a character that can attract a bigger star power pool. So will DC, for their DC universe, and I understand this, try and go for a more Hollywood popular actor? I mean, again, I wouldn't blame them. You want more star power. That's why Daniel Craig being in the DC was pretty cool. Or will it be done a little bit differently this time? And you know what? I'd actually kind of prefer that. Like, maybe cast someone a little bit less known, on the David Corenswet level, on the Brandon Skelnar level, but not somebody with nothing under their belt, if that makes sense. And it kind of feels, again, just to highlight it once more here, that one day I could open an article from the Hollywood Reporter and maybe see what I've been saying with history repeating itself, with just maybe him being amongst the front runners in the same vein as when we saw Tom Brittney, Nicholas Hoult, alongside David Corenswet being tapped for the role of Clark Kent. Now, having said that, I really do want to stress this. Please do not put this man as your only choice for Batman. Do not get your expectations up to that extent. It could lead to misery if that's all you've set your bets on, or, you know, at the very minimum here, make you see who may actually be cast as the DCU Batman one day is like, oh, like he's not right. But who's kidding? That's gonna happen anyway. Like whenever anyone's cast, people are like, oh no, look at sparkly vampire Batman. Like every time, man, every time. We honestly need a range of frontrunners built up, which is why I still need to do my Batman fan casting video. It's actually one of my most requested videos to do on the channel. So having said that, please let me know your top fan casts. And when I say that, I really want to stress realistic fan casts. We now need to move on to another Constantine update in the realms of DC Studios' Elseworlds movies. Now, just a couple of days ago, Josh Horowitz had Keanu Reeves and Francis Lawrence on to talk about the Constantine movie, the sequel that could be coming our way, because it's the 20th anniversary of Constantine with the 4K Blu-ray releasing, which I definitely need to get for myself. And he asked them, okay, so give me some hope, because I feel like there's real hope because the momentum has built the last few years. I've talked to you about this a bit, Francis. Keanu, you've been out there saying if there's one character I'm going to come back to, it's Constantine. Akiva said that there was a script that was done at the end of last year. Where are we at? Is there a script that you guys like what is happening? So Francis said, okay, so I will say, and this is quite interesting because he kind of like retells the history of what's been going on, and I could definitely see what he was referring to, even though he didn't say outright at times what it was, and why there's been a bit of a hold up with the Constantine situation. So he says, okay, so I will say, like I said very quickly after the release of the movie, we all decided that we would love to take another shot at it. We were trying to come up with some ideas, and what we have found over the last 20 years is that we have run into a lot of hurdles, primarily with regime changes at the studio, and that means both Warner Brothers and DC, and I think we all know what he means there. That's definitely going to get in the way of some things. And because those regime changes have happened, basically the characters, which are sort of a subset of DC Vertigo, that kind of dark universe, a lot of those characters, including John Constantine, have kind of bounced around. So, you know, we might be thinking of an idea, then all of a sudden, NBC decides to take a shot at John Constantine and do a network TV show. And that's how we got that Matt Ryan TV show way back when. So there's nothing we can do for a while. And then all the characters go to somebody else and they want to do a show, whether it's for HBO and whatever. and so there's nothing that we can do. And he was definitely on about that J.J. Abrams deal from like 2018, 2019, was it? Where he got millions and millions of dollars to do stuff on HBO Max. There was like a Madame X, there was a Zatanna project, there was a Justice League Dark project, and there was a John Constantine series actively in development, and nothing happened. So we have constantly kind of come back to try and go and go and go and go. And I think really what happened is Keanu going out there. And I think it was on Colbert, right? Asking, what could you play? And I think this sort of spread and finally convinced some people that have some control, like, hey, you know what? Maybe this isn't a bad thing. I think it's the combination of that and the sort of growing cult following of the original film over the years that have got people thinking like, okay, we can do this. Even if it happens to be outside whatever a DC plan is or whatever, the other material, that there is a version of my Constantine, Kiva's Constantine, Keanu's Constantine together that's outside of that. So he's referring to, Gunn's DCU plan. They can still maybe like do something outside of that. Obviously, what he really means is it's a similar vein to doing an Elseworlds Batman while doing a DCU Batman. And then he ends it off by saying we've finally got to the place where we now have the permission to go down that road. And Akiva is writing, and Keanu and Akiva and I have been collaborating, and I think we have some really, really great ideas that we're super, super excited about. And I think we're pretty close on having an object that is really workable. All I know is that we're really excited, and I haven't felt this excited about the object and this excited about how real it could be in the 20 years since we made the first one. So it has real possibility. And Keanu said some other things, like he's just aching to play this guy again. So not too much of an update on the script with regards to, again, in September, the producer said they had the script in his inbox. A lot of you guys were pointing out to me what I was kind of flirting along the lines of that might not have obviously have been the final draft of the script, because there's different iterations of the script that you turn over to producers. You do multiple drafts. You need the studio to look at it. So Gunn would want to have a look at it. He might have some notes. Obviously, I was speculating about that as well. Like maybe, even though they had an email back in September in the inbox with the Constantine 2 script with Keanu Reeves, I was wondering what if Gunn was like, hey, I'm not saying no, but you guys need to maybe work on this before I say for final yes or no. It's still a situation in flux, but the fact that he's calling it a real possibility, and the fact that they had a script, by the way, in the producer's inbox back at the end of last year, tells me that they are approaching the finishing line, and if not, have already by now, February 2025 compared to September last year, have probably been to the studio with the script at this point. But the good news is that this was a recent interview. It's not like they've completely shut it down or they've been told, yeah, sorry, you know what, we're not greenlighting this whatsoever. So that tells me if they have gone to the studio, to Gunn, DC Studios overall, that they're still willing to explore and make this work. And as I've said, I know not everyone is gung-ho about a Constantine sequel, but in terms of Gunn saying that he's committed to telling Elseworld stories, and I really do enjoy that first Keanu Reeves Constantine movie, all while it's not that comic book accurate, it still is, well, after all, it's an Elseworlds Constantine. There is potential there. I don't think anyone could really deny that, because I see some people being like, oh yeah, nobody cares about a Constantine sequel 20 years later, especially to a movie that wasn't super Constantine accurate. But I beg to differ. Just on the concept level, if I was like Peter Safran on the business side of things, I'd be like, you know what? Maybe I won't give you a crazy budget. Let's just see if we can do it for not Clayface levels 40 million or Joker 60-something million, but nothing like too crazy, like nearing 200 million. Maybe we're going to give you this $100 to $150 million budget. And, you know, if you guys can like work with that, somewhere near that, and keep it kind of low-key, really work with the nuts and bolts of like bringing a rough 20 years later Constantine, like 20 years later from the storyline that you saw back then in that first movie. I actually love lower budgeted movies like that, because you're really working with the bare bones of passion, people wanting to make it work. And again, as I said in my previous video, look at Godzilla -1. Look at the Clayface movie budget, $40 million. Now, a couple of final stories for today's video. We're going into the Marvel side of things now. And you guys know I am so hyped for Daredevil freaking Born Again. We've got a new Entertainment Weekly article where they came out of a new promo that I'm probably showing on screen right now. Look how freaking badass that is. I love the little transition they did between Matt Murdock and Kingpin into their comic book kind of, well, you got the Daredevil suit and then the white suit on Kingpin. We got some tidbits coming out of this article. I recommend reading the whole article yourself, of course, but we also had Marvel exec Brad Winderbaum revealing that they're exploring bringing back more of the Defenders characters into the MCU. I can't say much, but I'll tell you that it's so exciting to be able to play in that sandbox. Now, what's interesting about that, ladies and gentlemen, is that, as you may have heard, they're filming Daredevil Born Again, well, Season 2, very, very soon, because if you didn't know already, it's not just this season, they're doing next season as well, and hopefully, maybe beyond that. And Kristen Ritter, a lot of people have been noticing that she's been, like, working out in the gym quite a bit, posting that to her socials, and sure, that doesn't really mean much, but, you know, when you'd be preparing for filming for Daredevil Born Again Season 2, it's kind of like maybe she's getting back into, like, the role of, like, the shape of being prepared to play Jessica Jones again. And when you're hearing comments like this, I would personally love that. And I don't know, I'd love to know your thoughts. And for those of you who love Elektra and Daredevil, well, Sana Amanat, I probably butchered that as well, on the potential return of Elodie Young and the Hand for Daredevil Born Again. They're saying 100%. 100%. It's in the back of our heads. Eventually, we'll try to figure out a bit more of that. So I wonder if that's not something that they're going to do in the first couple of seasons, because obviously they're going into Season 2, and if it's still in the back of their heads, maybe they're not going to get into that right away. But if I remember correctly, her body wasn't ever found, right, after that building collapse. So you never know, and I guess they're not opposed to it. So I guess, would you guys like to see Elektra come back into the... I mean, I suppose after Season 1, and after Season 2 being about different things, I would be down for that, especially her stirring up a bit more trouble in Matt Murdock's life again. I don't know how game people would be to see The Hand. Maybe they could, like, improve upon what Netflix did, because I do know that you know, back then that was under quite a bit of scrutiny with the way they adapted things. And as for Frank Castle, Brad Winderbaum says that the Punisher's appearances in Daredevil Born Again are just insane. Matt goes to Frank because he needs something done that he's unwilling to do. And Frank, a bull in a china shop, drives right to the heart of the matter. And man, I am very, very ready to see John Bernthal return as the frickin' Punisher. We already got like a little slightly updated look at his logo from the recent TV spots that are coming out. And with that being said, just let me know what you are most looking forward to with Daredevil Born Again. I know there's some other little teasers that they've put out, such as new images from episodes. So episode stills at Foggy. Oh, Foggy. How foggy. And to end this video off, guys, going into more general movie news, as I said, I want to sprinkle more stories into these videos. Well, it looks like the BCU could be coming our way, as in the Bond cinematic universe, because as per Discussing Film and this huge story that's blown up now, Amazon will officially gain creative control of the James Bond franchise in a new joint venture deal. Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli will remain as co-owners of Bond, but are stepping back to focus on other projects, which is why Amazon are now going to have this creative control. And naturally, you know, everyone's freaking out because obviously they're not stupid enough to not give us new movies. They're going to keep the movies theatrical. It's not like they're going to just debut them on Prime. That would be a crazy mistake for Amazon to make, and I really don't think they would do that. But what I wouldn't put past them is absolutely the BCU, the Bond Cinematic Universe. And this is, you know, where we're talking about all of these spin-off shows in the Bond world, rather than just keeping it to like these prestigious James Bond movies. Now there's like the danger, and maybe some people are going to be really game for this, and I'm not saying that they can't create a cool kind of spin-off kind of thing, but you risk the saturation of stuff like this. Sometimes when you get people having their hands on like an IP like this, full creative control, they're like, right, let's, you get a show and you get a show, and maybe Bond will make a cameo at the end and you get a show. And I don't think I would mind it if they wanted to kind of maybe they look at the Batman cinematic universe, the epic crime saga, right? And they're like, okay, the Batman, but then look how well the Penguin series did. Like, hey, you won the Saturn Award and an Emmy and things like that, and it can bridge the gap between the next Bond we're gonna do. And if we really write something as good as literally what they came up with for the Penguin, but in the Bond realm of things, maybe I could see. But let's not pretend that they just don't see the monetary opportunity here. Obviously they do. This is a business at the end of the day. It's show business, so they want to make money. That's the same thing when it comes to Bond movies. But yeah, like maybe it won't be good for the brand. And you see what happens with various other franchises out there. Look at what's happened to Star Wars. Once this crazy, prestigious thing, you think of Empire Strikes Back. You even think of the prequels, dare I say it. Like, I have a lot of bias for those movies, but they were still the mainline movies, right? And then Episode 7, you had so much hype going into that. And I'm not saying every spinoff is bad. I'm in love with Andor and things like that. But you still look at this and how they have disappointed fans to the point of where people don't really care nearly as much anymore. As soon as you start shooting out all of these different things and trying to stab here, stab there, stab everywhere to make some kind of buck out of the, name of Bond, and you create a BCU, yeah. That's why people are kind of worried about it. So let me know what you think about this news. There's not really too much more to say other than I would like to get a conversation going. Do you think there is potential to be mined here? Or do you think, while there is potential, they're going to mine that ore vein to the point of tunnel collapse, and they're going to saturate the living crap out of the franchise of Bond, and as a result, it might just kind of fall off eventually in the next 5 to 10 years as something that people will feel a bit more apathy towards. But hey, we're gonna have to wait and see. Any and all thoughts, guys, on this story and every other story in today's video, let me know down in the comments below. So if you made it to this point in the video, you know what I'm going to ask you to do. Consider hitting that like button, consider subscribing for more news videos just like this. But I'm going to love you and leave you guys. So again, thank you so much for your support. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.